The Middle Ages, 500, 1500 CE. The Middle Ages, or medieval period, is the time roughly between the fall of Rome, 5th century, and the beginning of modern times, around the 15th–16th century. It's a period of about 1,000 years that saw many changes around the world. Often, people think of knights and castles, but there was a lot more happening globally. New empires formed, great inventions appeared, religions spread, and different parts of the world became more connected through trade and travel. Let's explore some key developments in different regions. Europe in the Middle Ages. After Western Rome fell, Europe did not have a large empire or strong centralized government. Instead, it broke into many small kingdoms. This era in Europe is sometimes called the Dark Ages, especially the early part, because centralized learning and infrastructure declined compared to Roman times. However, not everything was dark. A system called feudalism developed. Kings and queens granted land to noblemen, lords, who in return provided military service. Knights, armored warriors on horseback, served the lords, and peasants, serfs, farmed the land. The Christian Church, especially the Catholic Church in Western Europe, became very powerful during this time, providing unity and learning. Monasteries preserved knowledge by copying books. One of the key events in medieval Europe was the series of Crusades, starting in 1096 CE. The Crusades were religious wars, where Christian knights from Europe went to the Middle East, aiming to capture Jerusalem and the Holy Land from Muslim rulers. The Crusades ultimately failed to establish permanent control, but they had important side effects. They increased contact between Europe and the more advanced civilizations of the Middle East, spurring trade and exchange of ideas. Europeans rediscovered classical knowledge, like ancient Greek works, preserved by Arab scholars, and they gained new foods and goods, spices, silk. During the High Middle Ages, 1300 CE, Europe grew more prosperous. Universities were founded, for example, the University of Oxford, England, around 1096 CE, and the University of Paris, France, in the 12th century. These were among the first institutions of higher learning. Gothic cathedrals were built with amazing architecture. However, the late Middle Ages saw difficulties. The Black Death, bubonic plague, struck in 1347 CE, killing a huge portion of Europe's population, perhaps 1, 3, or more. This was a tragic pandemic, but it eventually led to changes in society. With fewer workers available, peasants could demand better conditions, and medieval society began to shift. By the 1400s, Europe was starting to transition into a new era with the Renaissance, a rebirth of arts and learning inspired by classical ideas. Byzantine Empire and Eastern Europe. The Eastern Roman, Byzantine Empire, centered in Constantinople, modern-day Istanbul, continued throughout the Middle Ages. The Byzantines preserved a lot of Greek and Roman knowledge and had a rich culture of their own, famous for their art and architecture. Like the Hagia Sophia Cathedral, they faced ups and downs, sometimes controlling large areas of the eastern Mediterranean. The Byzantine Empire finally fell in 1453 CE, when the city of Constantinople was conquered by the Ottoman Turks. In Eastern Europe and Russia, Byzantine culture and the Orthodox Christian religion spread. For example, Russia adopted Christianity in the 10th century from Constantinople. The rise of Islam and the Islamic Golden Age. One of the most significant events of the Middle Ages was the rise of Islam. In the early 600s CE, a man named Muhammad in Mecca, on the Arabian Peninsula, began preaching a new monotheistic religion. According to Islamic belief, Muhammad received revelations from God, Allah, beginning around 610 CE. He gained followers, faced opposition in Mecca, and in 622 CE he migrated to Medina, an event called the Hijra, which marks the beginning of the Islamic calendar. Within Muhammad's lifetime and shortly after, Islam spread rapidly. Muslim armies and missionaries spread Islam across the Middle East, North Africa, into Spain, and eastward towards India. The lands under Muslim rule were often called caliphates, ruled by caliphs, who were successors to Muhammad. Under the early caliphates, like the Umayyad and Abbasid dynasties, a vast empire formed, and there was a flourishing of culture known as the Islamic Golden Age, around 8th to 13th centuries. Baghdad, in present-day Iraq, became a center of learning. Scholars there, and in cities like Córdoba, Spain, and Cairo, Egypt, made advances in mathematics, developing algebra, science, improving medicine, astronomy, and preserved ancient Greek texts by translating them into Arabic. They invented things like the astrolabe for navigation, improved optics, camera obscura concept, and much more. During this period, while Europe was in its early medieval period, the Muslim world had universities, libraries, like the House of Wisdom in Baghdad, and was arguably the most scientifically advanced civilization. Asia in the Middle Ages. In China, the Middle Ages saw several important dynasties. The Sui dynasty reunified China in 581 CE after a period of division. Then came the Tang dynasty, 618–907 CE. A high point of Chinese civilization known for its art, poetry, and expansion of trade. The Silk Road thrived. Also, Chinese ships traded as far as East Africa. The Song dynasty, 960–1279 CE, followed, which was very innovative. During the Song, the Chinese invented gunpowder, originally for fireworks, and then weapons. By around 800–900 CE, gunpowder was known. They also invented woodblock printing, and later movable type printing, which meant books could be made more easily, spreading knowledge. The Song era saw the first use of paper money as well. However, the Song eventually faced a huge threat: the Mongols. In the 1200s, Genghis Khan united the Mongol tribes of the steppe grasslands north of China and started one of the largest conquests in history. The Mongol Empire, 1206–1368, became the largest land empire ever, stretching from China all the way to Eastern Europe. Genghis Khan's armies were fearsome, and his descendants continued expanding. In China, the Mongols conquered the Song dynasty and established the Yuan dynasty, with Kublai Khan as emperor. The Mongols also overran Central Asia, Persia, Russia, and threatened Europe. Under Mongol rule, trade across Eurasia was very safe. This was called the Pax Mongolica, Mongol peace. Famous travelers like Marco Polo from Venice visited China during this time and brought back tales of its riches, like gunpowder and noodles. The Mongol Empire eventually fragmented. By the late 1300s, it had mostly dissolved, and in China a new native dynasty, the Ming dynasty, took over in 1368. Elsewhere in Asia, Japan during the Middle Ages developed a feudal system similar to Europe's, with samurai warriors serving lords. Japan largely isolated itself from foreign influence for much of this period. In India, after the fall of ancient empires, northern India saw the arrival of Islam with the Delhi Sultanate, 1206–1526, controlling large parts of India. Southern India had powerful Hindu kingdoms as well. Africa in the Middle Ages. Africa is a vast continent, and during medieval times, it had diverse societies. In West Africa, there were wealthy trading kingdoms like Ghana, not the same as modern Ghana, Mali, and Songhai. These kingdoms grew rich from trading gold, salt, and other goods across the Sahara Desert, using camel caravans. The Empire of Mali, c. 1230–1670, was famous for its city Timbuktu, a center of learning and trade. Mali's most famous ruler, Mansa Musa, early 1300s, is legendary for his wealth. During his pilgrimage to Mecca, he was Muslim. He gave away so much gold that he supposedly caused inflation in the cities he passed. In East Africa, there were city-states like Kilwa and Mombasa along the Swahili coast that traded with Arabia and India, trading ivory, gold, and receiving spices, textiles, etc. In Central and Southern Africa, other kingdoms like Great Zimbabwe, known for its stone city structures, thrived through trade of gold and cattle. The Americas before 1500. During the medieval period, though we typically don't use the term Middle Ages for Americas since they were on a separate timeline, the Americas saw impressive civilizations. In Mesoamerica, Central America, the Maya civilization was at its height between 250 and 900 CE, classic Maya period. The Maya built cities with step pyramids in modern Mexico and Guatemala, developed a writing system of hieroglyphs, and made accurate calendars. Later, by around 1400s, the Aztec Empire rose in central Mexico, with its capital at Tenochtitlan, where Mexico City is today. The Aztecs were very powerful by the time Europeans arrived, early 1500s. In South America, the Inca Empire developed in the Andes Mountains, in modern Peru, Chile, etc. In the 1400s, with advanced engineering like mountain roads and bridges and terraced farming, they built the famous site Machu Picchu as well. These American civilizations had no direct contact with Afro-Eurasian civilizations in the Middle Ages, but they were highly developed in their own right, with large cities and millions of people. Late Middle Ages, signs of change. By the 1200s and 1300s, things were changing globally. The Magna Carta was signed in England in 1215, which was one of the first documents to limit a king's power and protect certain rights for nobles, a step toward ideas of rights and rule of law. The Black Death in the 14th century we mentioned shook up European society. In China, the Mongol rule gave way to the Ming, and the Chinese admiral Zheng. He led great voyages with huge ships, early 1400s, reaching Southeast Asia, India, and Africa's coast, showing Chinese naval power. However, after Zheng He, China turned inward. Meanwhile, in Europe, an energetic period began, the Renaissance, starting in the 1300s in Italian cities like Florence. People revived interest in ancient Greek and Roman art and learning. Great artists like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo created masterpieces. Invention of the printing press in Europe by Johannes Gutenberg around 1450 CE allowed books like the Bible to be printed quickly, spreading knowledge to more people. The stage was set for a transition out of medieval times into the early modern period.